And welcome everybody to another episode of Pulse of Fins Nation. I am your host, Louis Sung. I am joined by Ron Caniff. I am joined by Chris Early, otherwise known as Duke. I am joined by Eric Weideke, and we are celebrating the Miami Dolphins' victory over the Jacksonville Jaguars on Sunday afternoon. And it was tough going. They got gritty right at the end there. They were able to push through it. They got through the adversity. They went through the adversity for the first time, and God knows how long they actually managed to get it done when it counted. They came through in the clutch, which is something that a lot of talk about was, then the Dolphins beat good teams. Can they come through when it counts? And finally they did. It was in the very first week of the season, but they did. And we're going to talk about all that stuff, as well as trying to preview as much of the upcoming Buffalo Bills game, which is in 2 days. It's already only 2 days away.
I know.
So it's like Thursday night football this early. Yeah, this is the pre-game.
Yeah, it's pre. Yeah.
All right, so we're going to get into all that as soon as we can. But first, as always, we have to thank our sponsors, Jerseys 305.
Hey, it's Ethan Skolnick for the 5 Reasons Sports Network. We've got a great new sponsor that fits with us perfectly. It's called jerseys305.com. That's jerseys305.com. This is your home for dead stock and vintage jerseys from the Heat, Panthers, Dolphins, Marlins, and the other local teams. Their mission was born from a passion for wearing jerseys of the old styles and the past players. Jerseys 305 aims to make every fan stand out from the crowd with unique pieces that you don't commonly see anymore. Maybe 10, 15, 20 years ago, but not today. And Jerseys 305 was created by the fans, for the fans. They're diehards just like you. In fact, they're probably listening to this episode right now. So check them out, Jerseys 305, their partnership with 5 Reasons Sports, celebrating with a 10% discount on the next purchase using the code 5 at checkout. Unlock your exclusive savings on the entire vintage collection.
And we actually have a new sponsor to share with you all. It is actually the Real Estate Shop, and I do have some audio for that as well.
The Final Yard is sponsored for the entire 2024 Dolphins season by The Real Estate Shop. Before you make a final decision about who should be your real estate broker, make sure you reach out to Amanda Martin and Javier Iglesias, the dynamic duo leading The Real Estate Shop, which combines market expertise with a passion for community and personalized service. They offer honest and professional real estate services, guiding buyers and sellers with integrity and a client-first approach. From pricing to negotiation, they ensure every step is smart and transparent. They operate in Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach. They understand the local markets like no one else. Their deep knowledge of these areas helps clients navigate the complicated nuances of home ownership in South Florida. So reach out to them. Again, it's the Real Estate Shop. You can find them on Instagram at the Fort Lauderdale Realtor, or give them a call at 954-268-9812. That's 954-268-9812. Before you make a final decision about real estate, reach out to the Real Estate Shop.
And so there you go. We got a brand new sponsor to add to the show. Once again, thank you to the Real Estate Shop for sponsoring this show. And now let's get into some actual Miami Dolphins content here. Folks in the chat, Daniel Berry Sports Highlights always comes in with a greeting every show we have. Jam 442, fins up indeed. Cap for life. Gentlemen, yes, we are back. Cap for life, you are back. It's been a while since we saw you, actually. Jason Stamps, fins up. AKW Beats, yo, yes, yo. Chris Early, hey, I know that guy. He's actually has a voice to use. So once again, gentlemen, let's get into a little bit more. We talked about this during post-game, of course, because it was pretty much the same crew as it is right now. But I just want to go ahead, now that we've had a couple of days to reflect on everything that we saw on, have any of our thoughts changed, or have we added on to stuff that we already thought beforehand? I'll start with you, Eric. Has anything changed, or has anything been added from what we learned on Sunday?
Yeah, I kind of have a confession to make, actually, as I've thought about it in the last few days. Might get me some negative reactions here on Dolphins Twitter. But listening to the press conferences and really thinking back on this entire offseason, I'm going to be honest with you guys. Tua started trying to do this whole I have a voice thing. You know, I'm the leader of the team. He's been trying to do that for since last year. I didn't believe it. I didn't buy it from him last year. It seemed like it was fake. It seemed like it was manufactured. I absolutely 100% believe it this year. He's a completely different guy. He's not trying to put on a suit of a guy that's a leader of a team. He's actually the leader of this team this year. And maybe that's just him growing into the role. Maybe it's him getting paid and having that confidence, knowing that the organization is backing him 100%. But I think listening to what we've heard about what happened in the locker room at halftime, how he spoke about what happened in the post game, it really kind of, and I spoke about it kind of from the perspective of what Jordan Poyer said on post game and the Dolphins quitting and things like that. If you got up on him, I think that Tua's growth and that attitude as a team kind of go hand in hand. This is not going to be the old Dolphins, so to speak, of oh my God, as soon as one thing goes wrong, everyone's got the brown pants, and we're terrified of what's going to happen. This is a new Dolphins team. I believe in Tua now as the leader. I think it's fully believable. This is who he is at this point. And at least that's kind of my final thoughts on the game from Sunday, because I think we talked about everything that happened, at least the on the field portion of it. We talked about that ad nauseum. There's really not much more to add. I hope that the offense evolves a little bit week 1 to week 2, but I think that that's natural. This week, I think a lot of week 1 football was kind of really bad around the league. As I take a step and look at it, so in terms of the X's and O's, really not much more to add. Just I definitely see Tua kind of growing into that leadership role for sure.
Now, Ron, you are somebody who's been following Tua since his days in Alabama, so obviously you would have a little more insight into Tua's overall personality, I guess, than the three of us. So my thoughts to you is, I can see where Eric is coming from at the very least. Tua's new personality, as it were, did really seem to come out of nowhere, especially compared to the days when Brian Flores showed up. And then even when Mike McDaniel showed up in week 1, like the very first day he showed up there, yeah, he backed Tua all 100%, but it took a while for Tua to start becoming more vocal, but like the actual vocal leader, not just the lead by example guy. He actually started talking a lot more. Is that something that's new from his Alabama days? Did you feel like that this came on rather suddenly, or did you always know that this was there and it needed some coaxing? You're muted, sir.
He was a leader in Bama for sure. And I think those first 2 years under Flores just kind of beat him down, made him really question himself in a lot of ways, question his play, question his leadership, question a lot of things. He really wasn't given the chance to be that guy. And then he came out of that relationship with trust issues, right? And so even though McDaniel is calling him on the phone and say, "Hey, you're my guy, it's like, cool, but he really wasn't sure. And then it seemed like, yeah, this guy does think I'm his guy, but then am I good enough to do this? And I think that took some time too. It took a little bit of time for McDaniel to undo that damage that Flores did, because he did do some serious damage, and we can argue here that Tua's soft if you let that get to him. But this wasn't just a short period of time. This was a full couple years, and his first 2 years in the league. A little different if he'd had 5, 6, 7 years, had some success like he's had right now the last few years, and then suddenly somebody comes in and tries to tell him he suck. Like, I don't think he's buying it, but it was different. So I'm glad to finally see the Tua that I hoped we would, and that it be organic. And everything we hear from that locker room speech at halftime is that it was very natural and wasn't forced at all. And people really do. The team really believes in Tua, and they believe in Mike McDaniel. So that's what's important. If your team believes in your quarterback and your coach truly, you'll go far, especially when you're as talented as this team is.
Now, Duke, we've obviously, you and Ron, you guys have seen the Marino years, and nobody liked to talk and chew other people out more than Dan Marino, probably, as far as the history of quarterbacks on this team. So now that we're starting to see more of Tua here, do you feel like next step would be to just. I don't really know what's the next step that we possibly could take. I feel like has Tua reached his? I guess you could say has Tua reached his peak in a way. Like he's already super good when he's really on his game. Is this is this the best that we're ever going to see out of Tua? Is there even any more room to go up from here? Like, is there more stuff for him to fix, as it were, or is this peak Tua in your opinion?
The next step is win. To Ron's point about the leadership, and to Eric's point about the manufactured aspect of it that it seemed before. You look at some of the other guys that on other teams, even well-paid quarterbacks, such as, say, Daniel Jones, maybe Deshaun Watson even. Do you think those guys go in the locker room at halftime and rip into their teams, and those guys are tuning in like, yeah, I need to play hard for this guy? Or do you think they tune out and check their phone and wonder what they're going to get into after the game?
I know why Eric's laughing. Eric's like the Browns offensive lineman won't even accept help from Deshaun Watson to get up off their backside.
Now I did see a tweet from Joe Thomas about that. So he said it's more of an offensive line thing more than they still like him. But the point is,
I'm also just trying to imagine Daniel Jones doing that.
Yeah. Come on, guys.
Yeah, it's like, game respects game. And Tyreek can come out and say all he wants to say on the press conferences, and Jaylen Ramsey can say what he wants to say. But those guys wouldn't say this stuff if they didn't mean it and they didn't believe in Tua. And so we've all kind of hit those points. I think it's a matter of they understand Tua is a good player, and they're not saying it as fluff just to say, hey, we're going to prop him up because he's really not, but we're just going to make him feel good about himself. Well, he's got that big contract now, so all of that kind of stuff goes out the window. So it's produce and perform, and they believe he can. Otherwise, you get in that locker room, Tua says whatever he says, and they tune out. And you look in some of the other rooms, they're going to tune out with some of the stuff going on in those locker rooms. I can't imagine what's going on a few miles down the road in Charlotte right now with that locker room. What do you do in those cases? So these guys truly believe in Tua. It's not a manufactured thing. He's stepped up to be a leader, and they're falling in line with the vision. It's all part of the vision. It's one goal. And I think it was Emmanuel Ocho highlighted the 4th and 1 run that the Jaguars went for, and Jaylen Ramsey, Trevor Etienne. He's got a brother named Travis, and I get the two confused. Travis is the one that's still in college, right?
No, Travis
is the one who's the Jaguar.
Yeah.
Okay, so Travis. All right. So Travis runs to the left. Jaylen Ramsey stops him. They reverse field, and Ramsey makes a tackle on the other side of the field. Do you think he does that if they don't believe Tua can pull that thing out? I mean, I don't think they do. I think he's like, you know what? I got my money. I'm gonna jog, but you don't see that. You see these stepping up. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's my take on it. The next step is now he's got to go out and continue to produce, not only statistically, but it's got to show up in the stat sheet. And what you can't do is go into the locker room at halftime of the Jaguars game and say all that, and then face the Buffalo Bills, your nemesis, who've had your number for forever, and then go out there on the field and lay an egg. So, he's got to keep producing to do that. And if he does, he's going to continue to be that leader, and everyone's going to follow him. So, it's good to see that and good to hear that. I really want to hear the Hawaiian accent. That was fun.
Yeah, I'd love to hear what that sounded like.
And so now here's the next thing, though, because we've been hearing a lot of talk now about how Tua is saying things that normally he would never say. He basically called out Brian Flores for being a jerk to him all this time when he said it publicly on the Dan Le Batard show. Like, you can't really get much more public than that. He's been going out of his way to say things now. There was this one video going around. He mentioned his thoughts on Tyreek being detained. He mentioned his thoughts on what the Buffalo Bills rivalry means to them and all that stuff. Like, he's saying things that you could never imagine Tua saying. He would be as milquetoast, boring, bland as he could ever be. And now all of a sudden he's saying things that in football terms could be considered inflammatory. He's basically saying things like we all know what's going on with the Buffalo Bills, and the narrative is going to continue until we finally beat them. That's not like, even though it's not necessarily something that is it's not untrue, it's not derogatory or anything. It's nothing controversial. It's the truth. People are going to talk about it. But to hear Tua acknowledge it, though, in such a way that he's basically saying, yeah, I know people are talking about us, and until we beat these guys, they're going to say that we suck. So for him to acknowledge that, it tells me that Tua's grown a lot. He understands the mission, as it were. And maybe that has a lot to do with what the Dolphins are going to end up doing in Buffalo. Briefly, Ron highlighted the raging Dolphins maniac. The Fins are favored by 2. I can't remember the last time they were favored over Buffalo. Well, keep in mind that, if I'm not mistaken, home field advantage creates a 3-point difference automatically. Is that correct?
It's not an exact science. Somewhere 2, 2.5 to 3, depending on the team, depending, the stadium, etc. Pretty much that favored by 2 at home is pretty much a pick'em game. Is what they're saying. On a neutral field, it's a pick'em game. I'll take that. Honestly, at this point, I will take that. Considering, we both won last week in close games, so it's not like they're reacting to Buffalo getting stomped by somebody, and we blew out somebody. It's like we both just won. So Vegas is quickly seeing something in Miami, that they haven't seen in the past usually, because it'd be rare even at home for us to be favored even by 2 or 3.
Yeah, and especially against a team like Buffalo, which, by the way, again, this is something we have to emphasize, and this is why I made the title of the video what it is. Buffalo, for all their lack of talent all of a sudden, when I say lack of talent, I just mean they're not as talented, I think, on paper as they were last season or even 2 seasons ago. They lost a lot of really important pieces, one of which was none other than Jordan Poyer, who's one of our starting safeties. By the way, that man can jump. Did you know he could jump that high? Yeah. He's supposed to be an old fart. He's not supposed to be able to jump that high, but he almost got it. But I digress. Jordan Poyer, Saran Neal, who's a special teams ace. These guys are former Buffalo Bills. These guys, they are used to a team that this is what Buffalo does. They punch people in the mouth and they say, come back and get us if you can. And for the last few years, Miami hasn't been able to do it. Every time they would get beat down by the more physical Buffalo Bills, they would not be able to get back up. Hence why Jordan Poyer said what he said, and that, the Dolphins were looked at as soft. They couldn't handle it. They couldn't take the beating. So all you have to do is get up on them and just, punch them in the mouth. They're going to stand there and cry instead of actually doing something about it.
It's ironic that you mentioned getting punched in the mouth, because the Dolphins were inches away from being several scores down, and it was a literal punch that changed the outcome of the game. So that was the closest that Jacksonville got to scoring in the entire second half, and it just hit me as you start talking about getting punched, and it was an actual punch that changed the momentum of that game completely.
Yeah, definitely.
I give Javon Holland credit for aiming, because he hit it right where it needed.
That was a great play. He's trying to get paid. He had a few good plays in that game.
Now I want to, when you say that, he had it was a 3rd down pass breakup or something. I think it was on.
He did have one breakup. Yeah.
Did he not? Was it just me, or did he not get up after that? And his celebration was.
I didn't notice.
I swear I saw that.
Maybe it was, but I don't remember.
He's like, "Go ahead and give me my money."
Yeah,
you watch the game whenever you want, Duke. I've given you all the info for.
I'm just saying. I thought that's what I saw. So, if anybody else saw that or noticed it, let me know.
If that is the case, again, Javon Holland, I talked about this during post game as well. If I had to choose between Javon Holland and Jaylen Phillips, and I can only pay one of them, I'm still crossing my fingers that Brandon Shore can figure something out and make it so that they can keep both of them. But if I had to choose between the two of them, I would still pick Jaylen Phillips over Javon Holland, just because Miami has a awesome knack for finding spectacular safeties. I don't know what it is about them. It was Rashad Jones, and then they found Javon Holland, and back in the day, you could say Jeremiah Bell developed into somebody who was like a staple of the Miami Dolphins defense.
He was a good safety. Yeah, for sure.
The Dolphins are phenomenal at finding safeties. Like literally the reason that Nick Needham probably didn't make the team the first time around and now he's on the practice squad is because they had too many safeties to fit onto the roster. Elijah Campbell is another perfect example. Like he's there, he's doing his special teams thing, but the man can play football. So there wasn't enough space to keep Nick Needham.
I want to add in a name, even though he wasn't on Buffalo, that really adds just a little something to this defense and this whole team.
Is it one?
Talk about coming in the last minute in the 11th hour and putting your stamp on a team as fast as he has. Just again, we talk about being organic and natural. Just with his mere presence and leadership, he just oozes it. He really does. Sounds corny, but
he got his first sack of the season.
Yeah, he just after being in cuffs 2 hours earlier, or 2.5 hours earlier. Kudos to him and he really helps this team. Him and Poyer, and they just bring a little bit of nasty to this team. I think David Long does too. This is his second year here. Just we're adding some guys to the team that just have a little something, a little oomph. And what we need is the offense to just. So many times when I watch us play Buffalo, it always feels like Buffalo just wants it more in that fourth quarter. Josh Allen just is more determined than any other player on both teams to get it done every time. And we have to match his intensity, right? We have to match that. And that's how you beat Buffalo, really. I know you think it's about X's and O's, and yes, a lot of it is about X's and O's, but sometimes when it's close, it's just about intensity and desire in sports. It's more, sports, when everybody has the physical talent, it becomes about the mental part, right? When everybody is strong and fast and quick and skilled, it becomes about the mental part. And that's the part that Miami's been missing. And I want to say it feels different, but I want to watch this game against Buffalo first before I claim victory of that. So let's see. But you got to feel like Tua, especially. I want to feel like what I see when I see Allen play and just will his team to win when it starts getting tough.
Well, here's what I would say to that. And Duke, I think you were about to interject, but I just want to say this real quick. A lot of stuff that we see from Josh Allen, that it looks like intensity and willpower and all of these different traits that you're talking about, a lot of those come about and manifest themselves in the way of just raw physical talent. Like this, Josh Allen is a freak among freaks. Like the only one that you can argue, like there are only two other quarterbacks, and ironically, the other guys that you could argue are better than him in the league. Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes are the only other two guys who are more physically gifted, in my opinion, than Josh Allen. And even then, it's in different ways. Patrick Mahomes.
I think Josh Allen is better than Lamar myself, but I know a lot of people go back and forth.
If we're talking about physical gifts, Anthony Richardson is probably very close.
Oh, physical, yeah, but
he hasn't made.
Well, he's not at that level yet.
Good play. Yeah. One really, really good play, but he hasn't made his mark yet. We can't call him elite just yet.
But yeah, all those guys are the top three quarterbacks in the league, even over Joe Burrow. Yeah, because they can all do it without great talent around them.
I'm gonna say it right here on this show, and anybody can comment about how I talk too much all they want. Joe Burrow is severely overrated. Seriously. Severely, yes. You know why? Because he's always in that conversation of like the top 3 or 4 or 5 guys. Okay, this is my problem. What is Joe Burrow? Joe Burrow got to the Super Bowl. God bless him. He made it to the Super Bowl, and he hasn't sniffed it since. Not only that, he has played fewer games than Tua at this point in his career. But Tua's the one who's injury prone. Tua's the one you have to worry about. Is he going to make it? Is he going to survive the season? Joe Burrow has not survived anything.
I hear you. I hear you on the injury front, Lewis. I really do.
And the talent front, because he had Jamar Chase, Joe Mixon. He had T. Higgins. He had Tyler Boyd. He had all these special weapons around him, but Joe Burrow was the one who made those guys for some reason. But Tua is made by Tyreek and Waddle. It's a double-edged sword here.
That is annoying. Yeah, no doubt.
But there is one thing Joe Burrow has done that no other quarterback in the AFC has done yet in the postseason.
Beat Mahomes.
That is go at Arrowhead.
Yeah, in
That's,
Kansas City.
And
not in the playoffs.
unfortunately,
Mahomes is unbeaten, and not in the playoffs.
Yes, they called it Burrowhead for that reason.
Didn't he do it in the regular season, towards the end of the season, and then go back in the playoffs and do it again in that same season when they went to the Super Bowl?
Hold on, I'm going to check that because
the AFC Championship game was in Kansas City that year.
But I know, Lewis, you were trying to make a broader point. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Duke.
I was going to say the only other
quarterback. I remember Alf saying that he had not lost yet.
The only other quarterback that's beaten him in the postseason, I believe, is Tom Brady.
Who's that?
Mahomes.
No, I meant who's Tom Brady?
Oh yeah. He's that guy on Fox. But to what I was going to say to your point, you're talking about the Josh Allen wants it more. Maybe we're seeing some of that fire from Tua.
Sorry, I have to interject here. On January 2nd, 2022, the Chiefs traveled to Paycor Stadium and lost to the Bengals 34-31. So no, Mahomes is still unbeaten in the playoff at Arrowhead.
On January 30th, 2022, the Bengals went to Arrowhead and won in the AFC Championship game.
They were in Cincinnati.
No, that was at Arrowhead.
They did not play in Arrowhead. Mahomes is unbeaten in the playoffs at Arrowhead. He has never lost at Arrowhead in the playoffs.
Am I going? I have it on my.
How about we let somebody who's listening look this up and we move on to the Dolphins?
Mahomes has never.
So we can talk about the Dolphins on this.
Mahomes has played since he started. Mahomes has played in every AFC Championship game since he's become a starter. That needs to change.
That would be nice if Miami could get the home field advantage.
He's lost two. He lost to Tom Brady. That was the year they beat the Rams. And
he lost to Cincinnati.
So
both times on the road.
But either way, I think we're seeing some of that fire from Tua. I think he's always kind of had it. Now it's manifesting itself. So I think if this game's going to be close in the fourth quarter, and it's probably going to be, I think we're going to see both quarterbacks do some things. Now, Allen's can do things that Tua cannot. We know that, physical, talented gifts. But at the same time, Tua's going to do some things. He's going to make a play or two that it should be exciting to watch. Most of these Thursday night matchups are kind of usually rough. I'm hoping this one is not and is a very exciting game.
But I hope it's rough for Buffalo.
Yeah, I mean, if it's 63-0 Miami, I'm not going to complain.
Yeah, exactly.
But I don't think it's going to go that way. But I do think that we're going to see that from Tua. We're going to see some of that extra drive, and so I'm looking forward to putting that part out to the test.
My thing about the last few years against Buffalo, and to Ron's point, Josh Allen himself does a lot of that, where he'll kind of put on the Superman uniform and do it himself. I feel like I've seen like plays where the Dolphins, I think they won it. I mean, I think back to Javon Holland last year at home against Buffalo before the end. Wasn't there a play like right before the end of the half where Allen is running towards the end zone and Javon Holland, much smaller than Allen, just meets him at the goal line, stops him short?
Yeah.
I think of Raheem Mostert in Buffalo running through like 6 defenders down to the 8 or 9 yard line. I think it's really about discipline with this Dolphins team against Buffalo, because there's always that one mistake that they make because they're tight, and that goes back to belief as well. That goes back to really genuinely believing that you can beat Buffalo. Because if you really believe you can beat a team, you're not afraid to make one mistake, because you know you can beat them despite those mistakes. But it feels like in the last few years, the Dolphins have kind of been so afraid to make any one mistake against the Buffalo Bills because they're just worried that it's going to cost them the game. And they can't go into this game, and I don't think they will go into this game with that same kind of we have to play perfect football thing, because if you go into the game thinking that way, you're going to make a lot of mistakes, and it's not going to go well for you. They're going to go into this loose, believing they can beat Buffalo. And I think that I hope that it's going to show, a different Miami Dolphins team this year as opposed to the last few years.
Now, I want to go ahead and just bring this up. When we're talking about, like I said before, the physicality aspect of it, the willpower, the determination, the grit, as it were. This is why I just wanted to bring it up, because this is something that Chad, our good friend Chad Ronnebaum, highlighted during the post-game show on Sunday, 2 days ago. It's still only 2 days ago, and we're already getting ready for the next one.
Great, isn't it?
The Dolphins did something that they have not done, you could argue, since the days of Lusaka Polite. They basically said, here, fullback, take the ball and get my 1 yard. And he did it twice. He did it twice. They gave it to him twice, and it worked both times. That's the kind of thing that I'm looking for from these Miami Dolphins. Like, you want to prove that you're a different football team. You want to prove that you can handle the tough moments. Just get back to basics. Just be stronger than the other guys on the other side of the line, That's exactly what I'm looking for. That's what I'm talking about when I say just be more physical. Don't try to be cute. Don't try to outmaneuver them. Don't try to outrun them to the other side because you're hoping that you get there faster than they do, because they have more leverage on you, because you have more room you need more room to actually get there than they do. With that being said, though, just those 2 fullback dives to Ingold, I'm hoping, because I really believe that Mike McDaniel was not going to want to run the football. I figured he was just going to make Tua do everything again. And I'm hoping that this is not the case. Okay, so there you go. I publicly apologize on air, because apparently somebody did do the research, and Joe Burrow beat Patrick Mahomes on January 30th, 2022 in Arrowhead.
There you go. There's one in Arrowhead.
So there you go. He lost. Mahomes lost once in Arrowhead. The reason I was so adamant about it is because Alf had said that Mahomes never lost in Arrowhead. So that's why I was like, oh well, oops. But by the way, Alfredo Arteaga of the 3 Yards Per Carry podcast, you can listen to this show after it's done being live on YouTube on their podcast feed, and you can go to discord.gg/onlyfins to get some of the best Dolphins talk in the world, because they have a lot more to offer than the cesspool that is Twitter. So yeah, I won't call it X. I just can't. It does not even have anything to do with not liking Elon Musk. It just doesn't roll off the tongue, man. X doesn't matter. Twitter is Twitter.
It's just habit for me to say Twitter.
Yeah, it's Twitter. Yeah. You poll people and they're gonna say that it's Twitter. And
but we still call them tweets. Even if you say X, you say tweets.
It's tweets.
You don't say
it's a tweet.
X's. Did you see his X? No, I never.
Because it's supposed to be a post. It's like we're back in Facebook.
Whatever. Post, that's boring.
I'll tell you what. I don't want anyone seeing any of my X's.
Demonetized. All right, but this is what I'm talking about. Physicality, making sure that you're going to be tougher than the other guys on the other side of the field. Jason Stamps in the chat says, new rule, when you're wrong, you have to wear a Deion Jordan jersey. Are you going to buy it for me? I'll wear it if you buy it for me.
Does that exist?
Yeah, I'm sure jersey305.com has it. Use the promo code 5 and they'll give you 10% off.
They're going to have it for a really long time.
With this show, I feel like it should be a Liam Eichenberg jersey.
I'm still waiting. Hey, speaking of Liam Eichenberg, did you see his PFF grade?
It was high.
It was in the 80s.
Look,
I found this on Dolphins Facebook, some Dolphins Facebook post. The offensive line with the highest pass blocking efficiency in the NFL week 1, the number 2 had the top 5 teams. The number 2 team was the Dolphins at 94.3. The highest pass blocking grades in the NFL in week 1, Dolphins were 5th. And they listed a few other things. Teron Armstead was the 3rd highest graded tackle in the league. So, we watched the game and we talked about that a little bit post game. My connection was bad, so I had to get out. But yeah, I thought the offensive line looks rougher than what it was. And then the grades came out, and I'm like, what? So like grades in the 80s are reserved for like good players. That's actually your top. I mean, like if we were on Sunday Night Football, you know, where they show like the PFF grades at the bottom, Liam Eichenberg might be like top 10 with a grade like that. Blows my mind. But, you know, I saw a few plays where he looked like he did pretty well. So I haven't gone back and watched it yet.
The O-line actually played pretty good.
Yeah, I was going to watch it last night, and I ended up watching that Jets debacle. So
I'll say this. I'll say this about the offensive line. I am not an expert in how blocking works. I am not an expert in reading assignments or anything along those. Very much just trust what my eyes tell me, and I just look at the eye test. You can code that as I'm not well educated in X's and O's. That's fine. Everybody has their opinions. But I will say is that when there are two people whom I respect and their opinions differ dramatically, I am left somewhat in the lurch. We all respect, I think, Coach Eric Smith, who has been on this show a few times, and he's been on the post-game show, and he was the one who explained that even Liam Eichenberg, he has done a lot better than anybody gives him credit for, and we respect his opinion. As he is an offensive, he coaches offensive line as a football coach, so he would have an inside look at it. And then we have our good friend Alfredo Arteaga, who is the 3 yards per carry host along with Chris Kaufman and Simon Clancy. And he has mentioned on OnlyFans, this isn't really news, so I don't think I'm breaking anything here. He doesn't like Liam Eichenberg and his performance. So where is the line? Who is correct? What are we looking at here that the opinions differ so drastically? That is what I want to know.
I was trying to see if I could find what Alf said about Liam particular to this game.
And in the chat, Jason Stamps mentions coach's videos. Yeah, I was going to say, Jason Stamps mentioned Coach Eric's videos. You can go check out his YouTube channel. He does stuff, obviously, with us here at Pulse of Fins Nation, and he's got his own channel where he posts the Dolphins grades and his reviews, and they're very informative and very entertaining. So I recommend going to watch that.
Ron, if you're scrolling through the tweets or the comments on OnlyFins, I believe he was just mentioning that he's just over it. Like he's done, because he was mentioning Austin Jackson in the same breath and saying like, okay, yeah, there's something with Austin, but with Liam, not so much.
No, I missed that, but I can't keep up with everything everybody says, so it's hard.
But even then, it's like that's where my confusion comes from. Like, because I respect the hell out of Alf. I respect the hell out of Coach Eric.
This is why I went to Duke.
This
is why I went to Duke, and I said, "Where do you watch the All-22 at?" Because I'm just going to start watching for myself. I can't do this everyone else's opinion crap anymore. I'm just going to go watch for myself. I want to watch every snap of certain guys. Liam Eichenberg would be one of the first ones I'd be watching, just to watch, how that went, because I want to see. And I'm curious about Smythe too, and the snaps he was on, because what we saw was really bad, but was he doing well on the other plays he was playing? And it was just those snaps that we saw. It's just like with Austin Jackson. He let the one sack happen. But beyond that, he played really well. But people are only going to remember the one sack. That's what happens with Liam Eichenberg. He has a few bad plays, and it's all anybody remembers, and they forget that the other 64 snaps, he did exactly what he was supposed to do. It's just those two were bad. So that's all people think is, oh, Liam Eichenberg sucks, because, that's how we watch football. And that's how I've always watched football too. And I'm just trying to be more informed than that.
Unfortunately, my site that I like is Pro Football Reference. They don't have the splits up yet. So I was looking to see the splits on Smythe. He was out-snapped 42-30 by Julian Hill. And I want to see what a second half snap looks like. They don't have that stuff up yet. But I would say I think Durham got benched for Julian Hill in the second half, and I believe it was 3 yards per carry. 3 yards per carry. Chris Kaufman tweeted, "Julian Hill's probably tight end 1 moving forward."
Tight end 1 or tight end 2? You mean
tight end 1?
Yeah,
over Jonnu. Well, because they're using Jonnu at F
he's
position.
The F position. So
that's why.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, that makes sense. I hope they figure out how to work that in more in this game. I know this game was a little I don't know. The team was a little out of sorts. Offense felt a little out of sorts. So I don't think they got to. And it wasn't we're saving it for Buffalo. McDaniel doesn't save stuff. I just don't think they really got to work in because McDaniel calls plays like he's telling a story. The beginning sets up the middle, which sets up the end. And because it really wasn't, the flow wasn't good in that first half. He didn't really get to set up a lot of things and maybe call everything he wanted to call the way he wanted to call it. Didn't get all the situations he wanted, et cetera, et cetera. There wasn't as many long drives. I think that's part of why he was going for it on fourth down, to try, just if nothing else, to extend drives, to get to some of the things that he wants to do on the field to help set up other things. And so I'm hoping in this game we get to see more of what McDaniel has in store, because I know he has more in store with that F position and Jonnu. We just really didn't get to see it because the game was a bit clunky, if for lack of a better word.
Just one last point on the offensive line before we leave the topic. I do think that there is something to say about the deep balls that the Dolphins did hit were not the, okay, we want Tyreek on a go and Tua is going to let the ball go in 2 seconds, 40 yards down the field. They were deep crossers, and typically those are routes that take a little bit longer to develop. And in those cases, you need the pass blocking to hold up. And on two of the most consequential plays of the game, they did. And there's really not much more you can ask for than that, at least in the passing game.
And those were not first read plays either.
No. And I know that they talked to we heard McDaniel mention that they were busting their butt working on, not just designing the offense around first reads only, because they know teams are going in trying to take it away right away, which Jacksonville was trying to do. They're trying to go, that's the book on the Dolphins offense, is they want to get to the first read so they can get rid of the ball fast. That's the whole point. And now Miami's countering that. So then when the other team tries to recounter or counter, right, then Miami's going to maybe flip the switch back to it. And that's what when people talk about a good play caller, that's what being a good play caller is all about. That's what Kyle Shanahan does better than anybody else in the NFL, honestly. And Andy Reid's up there too. So that's where, and McDaniel's a really good play caller. So that's what it's all about there. It's just that cat and mouse game with the defense and the trying to react to their reaction and et cetera, and adjust to their adjustments. And the teams that do that the best and then execute are the teams that win the games on both sides of the ball. That's how it works.
And some of the times the adjustments are just kind of made on the fly in the middle of a play. And that's something that we saw Tua do a little bit of that. He took off and ran once. Hopefully he does that a little bit more, because I feel like that's going to make, I mentioned that will hopefully, like he made that one run, and I was hoping that, okay, that'll probably loosen up the defense a little bit, because these guys are honing in on him something fierce. Tua has to be willing to take off and run. Thankfully he was, and it just although I always say that first attempt that he made was a little bit awkward looking as he slid down at the line of scrimmage, because there was nowhere for him to actually run up.
Yeah,
so that felt more like an aborted play.
Yeah. Well, it's smart too. You know what? I like that I saw that, because when you think about it, you're so determined when you've worked on something, you worked on his body really hard, get slimmer, get faster, what have you. You worked on that so hard, so you have in your mind that you want to add that to the game to help your team. So here's your opportunity to run and take off. He didn't let that desire to show off his new, running ability, quote unquote. Not that there really is one, but you understand what I'm saying. He didn't let that force him into doing something dumb. Force him into taking off and running in a situation where he really shouldn't be, where he's just going to get clobbered for the sake of getting clobbered. He realized it was a dead play, whether it was an aborted play, a busted play, or that it was just nowhere to go with it. And he just slid down at the line of scrimmage because it was the smart thing to do. Thank you, Tua, for being smart and not forcing it, even though we know you want to use your wheels more. That first opportunity wasn't the time to do it. So I actually like that move from him, and it says a lot that, yes, I'm going to use my legs, but when it's practical and makes sense, not just for the sake of doing it.
And I believe that play counts as one of the sacks that he took.
It was just behind the line of scrimmage, so it would. I mean, it would.
So he was sacked 3 times, but only 2 times was it actual.
And yeah, and one of the times was straight up on him. Like it was his fault. So really, the offensive line gave up one true sack that was their fault. That's not bad against that defensive line of Jacksonville that, remember last Tuesday, we were scared about, right? Had the sack. Was it Josh Hines Allen, the sack leader last year in the NFL?
Second.
Okay, second was 17 and a half sacks, right? Yeah, we were scared to death of him and the rest of those guys. And the offensive line held up well. And we really, truly just gave up one true sack where the offensive line didn't get it done. Now, we didn't run block as well as I'd like in the first half. But also, Mostert just didn't look like quite like he was as fast as we've seen him. But maybe he just needs to work up to it because this team got these starters got almost no snaps during the offseason. Remember, McDaniel, what did he call himself? Mr. Load Management. So, I'm excited to see what happens in the Buffalo game and to see what they can do. It's an amazing time for a challenge like that. It's a Thursday night game. All these things we're talking about are coming into play in this game.
I'm hoping they've just shaken the rust off because this is why I feel like in preseason, like there were a lot of teams that let their starters actually play a little bit more in the preseason. And there are pros and cons to everything. Just the level of load management that Mike McDaniel has been using, I feel like to some extent it's to their detriment. And there, like as we all mentioned, it's not exclusive to the Dolphins. Like there were a lot of teams around the league this past week that their teams just looked off. Like there was
only one
wrong.
Quarterback that threw over 300 yards. Did anybody throw under 300? Over 300, I should say, last night.
No, there's two quarterbacks that did total for the week.
Oh, there was two. Okay, I thought there was
Tua was one, and who was the other one?
Who was the other one?
Stafford.
Okay, on the Sunday night game. Okay, because I'd seen the numbers before the Sunday night game.
But to your point, a lot of the football this week, outside of a handful of games, is just ugly football.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean,
it looked like a preseason game with starters.
Yeah, this was a preseason game, but it counted. That's kind of what week one was.
The Seahawks took two safeties in a game. And it was funny, the last time that happened was the Dolphins had two safeties against the Broncos in 2017, I think that's what they said. They actually mentioned that on there. But yeah, it's just a lot of sloppy football. And Miami still put up 400 yards. They left at least 14 points on the field. So I will take a 400-yard sloppy victory if that's going to be sloppy, and then they cleaned it up later. I'll take it.
Yeah,
I don't think anybody wouldn't. A win's a win at the end of the day. I'm just glad George Kittle laid an egg last night because that got me my win in fantasy because I was playing against him.
Hey, so that brings up a point. You talk about San Francisco. So you saw the thing about the running backs that he knew he was going to be the starter on Friday, and they didn't announce it until last night, and that's the whole injury report thing. Do you think McDaniel's playing a little bit of cat and mouse with the whole? They didn't actually practice today, but if they did, these guys would be out.
He better not, because the NFL is already eyeballing him something fierce. So,
well, if they don't get Shanahan for his running back going on TV and saying, "Yeah, they told me it was starting on Friday," it was Mason. Then they ain't getting nobody because that's just straight up obvious.
They will
that
still
Shanahan
come after
was playing.
Ron,
Shanahan
they will come after Miami.
They're not
Miami
gonna,
is the NFLPA's
get
punching bag.
Well, then they're not going to get Miami for doing what they should be doing, and that's playing cat and mouse.
No,
with
the NFLPA ranked
report,
Miami as the best place to play. They don't hate Miami like
they,
that.
They at the best place to play. That doesn't mean that they're not going to punish them whenever they get the chance.
Players actually did.
Yeah.
Eric, the players voted that, not the league. The players,
I said the NFLPA. Yeah, the players.
Okay. I don't know who is in charge of that. The Players Association, but there is a Players Association like actual representative.
No, there is.
But maybe it's the competitive committee. The competitive committee, the NFL competitive committee. Maybe that's what it is.
There was one interesting theme that I think there was like an instant reaction that it was like a hive mind amongst Dolphins fans after Sunday, and it was the Dolphins need to play better against Buffalo than they did against Jacksonville. And I agree for the first half. I think that there are some things that we can take away from that. and talk about what does need to change from week 1 to week 2. Because I think I have a really obvious thing here. The Dolphins can't get themselves behind the sticks on third downs as much as they were on Sunday against Jacksonville.
No screen pass. No bubble
you
screen.
You have to run the ball first and second down, and you have to be effective doing it. You can't get yourself into 3rd and 10, 3rd and 11, 3rd and 12 as much as you were against Jacksonville and expect to be successful against Buffalo. If there's one thing that I want them to focus on fixing, it's winning first and second downs on Thursday.
Duke, what are your thoughts on the one key factor here to beat Buffalo?
We need to see a 60-minute performance from the defense as to what we got in the second half of the Jacksonville game. We've seen Miami go up against Buffalo and score points with them at times. We just can't allow them to move the ball at will. I think back to last year, week 4, the first few possessions, Buffalo goes right down the field, scores. Miami goes right down the field, scores. Buffalo turns around, scores. Miami scores. It's 14-14 or something like that.
Yeah.
And then the wheels fell off for Miami, and Buffalo kept scoring.
Yep.
The defense needs to play the full 60 minutes of – and I'm not asking for a shutout, right? They're not going to pitch a shutout against Josh Allen. That's probably not going to happen. If it does, great. But I think they need to have a performance where they're flying around, tackling everybody, no missed tackles. We saw a lot of that this week. And just because, those last few possessions that Jacksonville had, I mean, that's part of Trevor Lawrence. He's still a young quarterback. He's just not that same dude that Josh Allen is. And there will be times that Miami gets them in a 3rd and 7, and Allen's going to be back there and break, contain, and rush for 15 yards. And we see it and we hate it. They need to put a stop to that. If the defense can clamp down, I think Miami's offense can do enough to win this game. So I know a lot of people want Tua to put up a bunch of yards and the offense to go off, and that wasn't what we saw against Jacksonville as was going to be expected. But to me, it's going to be on the defense. They're not Stein.
I want to see a fierce, almost pissed off intensity from Tua as that game is tight in the fourth quarter.
What does that look like, though, Ron?
It's one of those things that it when you see it. We'll know it if we see it. I just want to feel that something coming from him that
the idea
brings
that
feeds into the team. That's what I want to see, because I think that's what you see from Josh Allen and why they always get up. I mean, dude, Josh Allen gets up to play the freaking Dolphins more so than he does any other team. And this year is going to be no different, because, again, people are saying how Miami's better. And look, Miami's favored by 2 and blah, 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 blah. So I want to see a fierce intensity from Tua as that game tightens and is close, and especially hopefully it is at least close and we're not getting blown out or something in the fourth. So that's what I want to see. That's my hope for this game, because I believe when it's all said and done, that's going to be what brings us up over the top.
Well, if you're going to ask me, I'm going to go with what's being said in the chat right now. No more Lenny Pena, no more counter pitch plays. Jag saw that play coming a continent away, and no more bubble screens, please. Jam 442, no pass interference in the end zone. Jason Stamps, no drops. All of these things can basically be set up to say, just play efficient. Don't make dumb mistakes. Don't line up offsides, Jonnu Smith. Don't drop your one screen pass, Jonnu Smith. Don't screw this up. That's basically what it boils down to. No self-inflicted wounds. Like things like, holding. Okay, you get caught with that. Things like a false start. Okay, you jumped because somebody else jumped. I get it. It sucks, but it happens to everybody. Not lining up where you're supposed to, that's fundamental. You should know that by now. Catching a pass that hits you in the chest, That's something that's fundamental for any NFL player. And it's not even that, oh, it was like a Braxton Berrios thing where he was on the run trying to make the catch or the ball was tipped on its way there. That's nothing to do with it. The ball went his direction and he just, bloop, he didn't catch it. Same thing went with Julian Hill, Durham Smythe. The ball was there and then bloop, they just didn't catch it. That's something that cannot happen. It just can't. Ron, Raging Dolphins Maniac. Ron means he wants the same determination Tua showed against the Ravens 2 years ago. That just felt like Tua couldn't miss. Like, for whatever reason, Tua flipped the switch.
Tua was in his zone.
Throw he made.
Literally, he was in his zone.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was in the NFL quarterback version of a Steph Curry zone in that game. Now, that would be great because you put Tua in a zone in any game, you're screwed as a defense. Like if Tua starts feeling to where he can't miss, you're screwed because he can read defenses as good as anybody. You're toast if that happens. I just want to see him. I just want to see that want and desire. Like Poyer talked about that. The Buffalo Bills would laugh because they'd look across the way and they'd see the Dolphins over there crapping their pants when the Buffalo Bills got up on them. And I want to see a reversal of that. Now, first of all, I don't want to see them get up on us, but we just need that little something, little fierceness, man. We need it. It's got to come from Tua. It has to come from Tua. It can come from other guys too, but it's got to be Tua.
It's the George McFly moment in Back to the Future when Biff's got his arm twisted.
Oh yeah, and he just punches him and spins him,
knocks him out. We've got to have that. If they do that this week against Buffalo, against Josh Allen, against a guy, as you said, that gets up for the Dolphins. Go look at his splits and look at his stats versus Miami versus everybody else.
Yes, it's insane.
He's good versus everybody else. He is first ballot Hall of Fame GOAT quarterback against the Dolphins. I don't get it. But if the Dolphins have that George McFly moment, they're not losing again for several weeks.
I agree. Yeah, no doubt. Yeah.
Would you believe me if I said I finally understood that reference because after all these years, I finally watched Back to the Future?
Well, welcome.
Once again, you can thank my lady for introducing me to all these new things. So with all that being said, new to me, new to me. Like I watched Justice League. I watched recently I started watching Avatar. I was a cartoon kid. That I liked watching the dramatic cartoons that had like more substance to it than anybody realizes. Like, just ask me about that one day and we can talk about it. But anyway, we're going to go ahead and call it here. Thank you all so much for joining us. Once again, you have jerseys305.com. Use that promo code 5 and they will give you 10% off on your next order at that website to get some vintage Dolphins /Heat /whatever South Florida merch there is. And of course, the real estate shop for all your real estate needs. You can get the number in the link in the description below. All of that is available to you for any real estate needs in South Florida. Make sure you check them out. They are strong in family, strong in just caring about the people that they work for. So make sure you check them out and give them a shout out. All right, we're done. This will be showing up on the 3 Yards Per Carry podcast feed, and we will see you all next time on Thursday, when we'll give our picks and everything. And hopefully I'll make sure that Ron gives us some because I'm told he's not going to be available for Thursday. So I'll make sure that I get one and I will read it on air when it's time for pregame. So good night, everybody. You have a great one.